Hello everyone, this is Stas and welcome to my new TouchDesigner tutorial. And today I want to talk with you about voxels. Voxels becomes very popular when Minecraft was released because it's all about voxels graphics. And voxels is like pixels, but pixels is squared tiny dots, tiny squares that stuck together to form a two-dimensional picture, and the voxels is cubes, little cubes that stuck together to form 3D shape. And it's not this, let me increase the scale a little bit. It's not the same as just making box instances in TouchDesigner, because here, for example, I make a box instances, and as you could see on my hand, the boxes are meshed and blended one into another, while in proper voxels graphics, in voxel styles, it should stuck one close to each other. And it's not limited to Kinect only, like I'm here with Kinect. It could be used in many different scenarios. For example, it could be just our lovely noise. Everyone loves noise. If you don't like noise, I don't know what you're doing with generative art. Yeah, it's a joke. You could use it here with geometry stored in top. For example, this is Stanford Bunny. You could make voxels from Raymarching. You could, number 3 is our Kinect. You could have different options how to make them out of regular SOPs. And recently in TouchDesigner there is a point file in, oh well, maybe not so recently, point file in with pli and other files, and you could make voxels from it as well. And all of them, it doesn't depend how it comes, it's only a one super simple trick. And I'm going to create this trick with you from scratch. Let's start. So let's make voxels from noise because it's super simple and it looks nice. We need noise because we would like to have interesting looking geometry. We need a 32 bits float, or we keep the resolution the same. And we would like to instance from the positions, so we need, it's not monochrome but three-dimensional. And yeah, and let's animate it a little bit. Apps time.seconds multiplied by 0.25. Yeah, this is nice, maybe a little bit less on scale. Okay, here we put a null, we call it position, and let's make our rendering setup. We would like to have a box, probably a very small box, and make a geometry from it. Geometry, so we also need our camera. We would like to, I prefer to have a light as a child of camera, so light's always looking at the same direction as the camera. Maybe we would like to have our camera look at null. Maybe we would need it, maybe not. It's very simple to do, so let's do it. And the render, where is my render? Render. let's make it a square. So here's our little pixel. Maybe we could rotate it so it's cube, maybe rotate it like this as well. And you could use PBR, I would use Fonk just to keep everything simple and not to run into any FPS issues because I'm recording right now. And we go into instance page, feed our position, RGB, and here we have our noise. We need to, it's not centered because we need to set offset to 0 and amplitude, I don't know, 1 would be okay, maybe even slower. Yeah, okay, that's nice. And let's display it. So now it's not a voxels, it's, as I explained a little bit before, we want our boxes separate and stacked edge to edge. So actually the trick is super simple. We could use the level top and go into stepping and set a step, but I prefer the limit top. It's about the same, it's a quantize, and there is two options, a quantize value and quantize position. And even though we working with the position, I really like to use quantize level. You could read about limit top and difference between quantized values and quantizing positions here on wiki. Okay, so now it's already looks like voxels, but it's too big, and this value would actually, depending on this value, let me, how to put it in the words, sorry, I haven't prepared a speech. Okay, what quantize do? Quantize, it's like, probably it would be easier to show you on ramp. On the ramp, we have a ramp, we set our limit and set quantize. So what quantize do, it's with step 0.1 separates the values of the pixels. So if we press D and see pixels values, we have 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and so on. If we set value step to 0.5, so we have more steps, and so on. And what does it mean for us? What it gives to us is that our position when we have an instance would be also stepped. So now all we need is to set the box size similar to the step of a limit. We could copy a parameter and paste bind, and here we have it. And because it bind, I could change the values either here or here. So if your value is too small, at some points there is no box because there is no pixels in this position. But if we increase our resolution, probably now we have a pixels. And depending on what effect do you like, sometimes it's a good option to set a rim colors, for example, some contrasty, like yellowish, orangish on, for example, on the top, and another rim, something bluish on some different size, in different side, maybe more blue, maybe more dark. It's also a good idea to have another geometry and make a wireframe for this, or you could use a line top. I like a wireframe, it's a little bit faster, and with it you have an edges. In a simple geometry it should work like this. In some cases maybe you would like to use a render pass and have a geo 1 here and geo 2 here, and in this way you have one render for this geometry and second render for wireframe, and then you could composite. The downfall of this is when something is moving, because it's now it's a little bit jumpy, and you couldn't do anything about it because it's a nature of quantizing. Because as I showed with ramp, let me do it again. As I showed with the ramp, or actually I could do it with a noise as well. I just set the quantize with some bigger value. So for all of these pixels of the same color, they would be on the same position, and they don't go smooth into another position like here, but they jump into different position. So that's why it looks jumpy. But for some kind of stylistics, maybe it's what you like, because yeah, this is Voxel's tutorials, and so this is downfall of voxels. Okay, this is effect, and now I'm gonna show you a different one more thing. After my last tutorial about writing your own GLSL component for transforming the point clouds, one of my patrons showed me Prime. He showed me that on the palette, on the point clouds section, there is a point transform component which do exactly what I showed you last time, but it's doing this in a little bit different way. So if you're interested in GLSL, you could saw my previous tutorial and then checked this component, because it's different. It's made with transformational matrices. It's a different approach, so probably you could learn some more ideas and some more approach to GLSL. But here, for this tutorial, you could use this component for rotating, scaling, and doing other stuff with point cloud. Because essentially what this noise right now, it's a point cloud for our instances. And why you need to do it with a component, not with a geometry, that's because for a simple setup you could do it with geometry, but for example here, where I have a lot of different examples. Here I'm using my own component. For different examples, I have different values of translation, rotation, and so on. So this is a situation where you could have a same geo setup but different transformation in components. So now let's talk about different applications. First of all, if you have a file, movie file in, where your point cloud stored, you just use it as simple as noise. If you have Raymarching, for example, if you haven't worked with Raymarching yet, you should see my tutorials about it. But if you knew some things about Raymarching, let me show what I did here. Because we interested only on positions of our Raymarching geometry, we don't need any lightings, we don't need any lighting functions. All we need to do is set up a scene. And here on the Raymarching, when we do our Raymarching stuff, when we found our positions of our geometry, we output this position from our camera angle as it is. So we have RGB, and I set the alpha value as 1. Also, what you could notice from here, it's somehow green. It's because I said if we didn't hit anything on Raymarching, I set the value into -99, and I explained this trick on my previous tutorial. It's about my component for point cloud translate. But you could set the value 0. The only problem with value 0 here, so 0.2. With value 0, you would have one instance on the position 0, 0, 0. And if you set some bigger value, you don't have this point. Okay. Should I explain something more about Raymarching? Probably not. And yeah, you could either delete all lighting or comment it to save a lot of GPU power, because right now Raymarching is super, well, it's not super, but okay, it's okayish. What resolution? Ah, yes, because it's large resolution. If I turn off or turn on all the lighting, we don't need it, but it will increase GPU and CPU time maybe twice or maybe 3 times. So you don't need that. For Kinect. For a Kinect, I prefer to use depth point cloud because it's a lower resolution, and in color point cloud sometimes you have sometimes you could have artifacts. Here, I don't know, would we have it right now? Maybe in this setup you would. Oh yeah, we have it. And also, as you could see, my FPS drops because right now the resolution is way too high for me, for my GPU to do all the stuff and recording and so on. And I also have a lot of different stuff going on here. So I'm set to, but main issue is this grid pattern. With depth point cloud, you wouldn't have this. So here I am. Yeah. And another interesting thing for Kinect, you could also colorize your, where is my colors? Here. You could set another Kinect top, choose a color, and because I have this depth, I need to set a camera remap so it have a similar resolution. And now I could set it as my colors. It doesn't look nicely here because I have these rims and stuff, but if I use just a regular phone, yeah, now it's a little bit dark. I could, I don't know, increase the value here or use some tops and so on. And probably if you work with Kinect, you would like to use how it's called. You could use the player index or some different approach to delete the background, because right now this background looks strange, and this my double here, it also looks not nice. Okay, that's what we need for Kinect. Okay, now let me show you this point file in. It's also super simple, just plug in and do all the stuff. It's PLY files and some different formats of point cloud files. You could download a lot of point clouds in internet. I believe some drones could do point clouds, maybe some lidars and so on. And maybe the most not difficult but a little bit tricky part is working with geometry. Let me switch to geometry. Here I have what do I have here? Okay. If I just here I plugged a teapot, it's a little bit of points, and if I use this teapot, put it into SOP and then SOP into chop, you'll get this result. Maybe if I lower the value step, it will look better, but not so much, because there is too little points. Sometimes it depends on your file. Sometimes it could look good, sometimes maybe it's what you're up to, but probably you would like to have more points. And there is several options here. One option is to use resample SOP. With resample SOP, you could here, for example, my original file, but if I switch into resample, as you could see, it generates a lot of new points between on the every segment of polygon. And now we have a little better geometry. It still generates points only on the sides, only on these edges. Maybe it's what you want, maybe it's not. For example, here recently I uploaded this video. I'm using exactly this property because here on the skull I have this polygonal grid, and I like this. I like it. I like this regularity of this grid. It's better than to have irregular points everywhere on the skull. but maybe you don't like it. And if you don't like it, you could use scatter. Scatter is a very nice tool. You don't have scatter SOP in normal palette. There is no such tool. I have it on a custom operators. How to find it? Let me switch into scatter. What scatter does, it generates points everywhere randomly on the geometry. For example, right now I have 40,000 points. I could set the amount of points I want to generate. I could set it a lot. There is still a bit of regularity, but it's different type of regularity. You could find this tool by AGK48N here, or you could just Google here for scatter. There is on the forum scatter points on surface, and there is a tool. There is a C++ plugin, so you need to put it into your plugin directory in TouchDesigner. There is a page on Wiki how to do it, if you never did it before. But there is still downside of geometry, because if we go into our teapot, it's not the volume, it's just the surfaces. So it's like it's empty teapot. And usually every polygonal geometry constructed this way. And it's a difference between polygonal and, for example, Raymarching or SDFs. So you don't have any points inside the teapot. So it's more like a surface. If you want to have a points inside a teapot, it would be much more difficult. One idea that I could think of is to use, for example, particles, and generate a lot of particles somewhere, and use this teapot as a boundary and make as a limit and make it bounce, so I would feel the particle inside of this, a lot of particles inside this teapot, and use these particles to convert it. But it would be very slow and it doesn't look very nicely. I tested it, so I didn't include it in this file. Oh, by the way, talking about file, as always, if you would like to have this file as a whole, you could support me on Patreon, get this file and get some other examples. But I think you could recreate it by your own as well, because I think it's super simple setup. Anyway, if you like my tutorials, you could support me on Patreon. It's very nice to see when some new Patreon supporters comes in, and it motivates to make more tutorials. And now let me think what to show you. Here is the last bit. Let me switch, for example, to, I don't know, to point cloud maybe. To Raymarching. You could use this limit. Usually on the voxels you would like to have this stacked and voxels everywhere, but you could play with the scale. For example, right now I have a scale of 1 everywhere, but if I switch into a noise, I could have different types of effect, or maybe with the Kinect it would be even more interesting. Yeah, so here I disappear, or maybe with bunny. Yeah. Here we have some decomposition of a bunny. And I prefer still this stylistic of voxels with whole cubes, and so I set the exponent to 0, but you could use a different tools if you're okay with this scaling with voxels of different sizes. You could do it as well. So what's going on? I put well, there is a lot of different ways to do it. Here, the simple one with a noise, I just on the both inputs of noise stop, I put the output of my limit, and set it as a scale for instance, and that's it. But you could play a lot with adding a lot of different noises, functions, and so on. And sometimes you could get an interesting result. For example, one of unexpected. So here on my Instagram, I have another one. Here I use two noises and then combine it with some function. I think it was yeah, I think here on the function, if you combine a noise and limit with some arctangents input, arctangents of two inputs, maybe noise should be not monochrome, or I don't know. It's because, yeah. Oh, yeah. And also important because I don't want the noise exceed the value of 1. I set it format to fixed, but you could limit, because if I set it to just a normal float value, some of my voxels would be too big and it would intersect with another voxels, and I don't want it. But maybe you want well, I hope you get an idea. You could play with tops here. And the last thing is you could merge these different tops and get also interesting effects. Let's, for example, the simple solution is again in the palette, in point clouds. There is a point to point merge component that do exactly that. And I could, for example, feed my noise, feed my point cloud, and put it into my network, so it will be 6, yeah. And now I have, and let me switch back to constant. So now I have both of my Raymarching and my noise, or my Raymarching and, for example, bunny. But you could do more crazy stuff. For example, you could use, I don't know, composite top or some of composites tools. For example, right now I have this wobbly image of me. Maybe it's too wobbly, but I could. And this kind of effect, it would be kind of difficult to create without this approach. Wobbly. Yeah. Okay. And you could invent a lot of different other ways of combining all these tools. So yeah, probably that's all I wanted to show you for today. Please subscribe, leave a comments if you experiment, make art, have fun, stay safe, and goodbye. Bye.